Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and I live with schizoaffective disorder, and over the last year I've been sharing on this channel my experience of using metabolic therapies to treat and manage my illness. Part of the journey that I've been sharing over this past year has also been my experience of slowly tapering off of my psychiatric medications. I started this year on a dose of antipsychotic and I've slowly reduced this dose over the year to the point where I went completely off of my medications about 2.5 months ago. A question though that has been coming up a lot from our audience is why I decided to go completely off of my medications instead of staying on a small dose of antipsychotic in conjunction with metabolic therapies. I think that this is actually a really great question, and it does open up a bit of a conversation around treatment options and personal choices. I know this is something that a lot of people are wondering about in terms of my experience, but probably a lot of people who are also trying to navigate similar challenges around what to do with meds if they're implementing metabolic therapies. But I also really do want to stress that what I have shared in terms of what I chose to do and what worked for me is not going to necessarily be the right choice for everyone. It's going to look a little bit different. And what it really came down to was exploring what worked best for me. And I also didn't even start this journey of trying metabolic therapies with the goal of reducing my medications at all. I really just wanted to add metabolic therapies to see if it could improve my quality of life and my experience of my illness and my symptoms. Going through it and seeing how it did affect my illness and my life so profoundly, and kind of learning more about how the medications were affecting me, it led me down the path of tapering off my medications. But I'm going to share more about why I made the decision to eventually go completely off of medication. But before I get into sharing more about why I chose to go completely off medications, I do want to make one thing very clear, and that is that I am not against psychiatric medications. These medications have been life-saving for me at various points in my illness and have helped me navigate some really dark days and really difficult struggles throughout my illness. I deeply respect that these psychiatric medications are essential for some people in terms of managing their illness, and I fully support anyone who chooses to use them when managing their illness. My story and what I've been sharing about what I've gone through over the last year is not about saying, go off your medications. It's really about exploring what works best for you in terms of improving your quality of life. And that's really where my decision about what worked best for me in terms of reducing and going off meds came from. All right, so why did I ultimately make the decision to go completely off my medication instead of just staying on a small dose in conjunction with metabolic therapies? Throughout this tapering process, I became more and more aware each time I went down on my antipsychotic how it had been impacting my experience of my life. Yes, I did experience pretty intense withdrawal symptoms going down off these meds, which was not great. But even going through that, and especially after moving through that, I felt this kind of renewed, deeper connection with myself. And I'm not really even sure how to properly describe that other than I felt more connected or a deeper experience of my emotions. I felt increased creativity again. I just felt more myself. And I also realized that a part of this was that I experienced a pretty large degree of just general blunting while on antipsychotics. And again, I'm really not trying to villainize antipsychotic medication here. It's just kind of a reality of what I experienced and the trade-off I made in terms of having to deal with these kind of aspects of it in order to manage my symptoms. And that was kind of okay. It felt like an okay trade-off for a while. But then once introducing metabolic therapies and my experience and my illness started to improve and change so drastically, it became kind of less of an acceptable trade-off, whereby I didn't really want to be experiencing these things anymore because I didn't really have to be. My illness was being managed pretty well through different means, metabolic therapies. I also always have had concerns about long-term risks of being on psychiatric medications like the antipsychotics that I was on. There are a lot of different potential side effects of taking these medications, but one potential long-term side effect of taking antipsychotics that I've actually already started to develop is around tardive dyskinesia. If you've been watching our videos for a while, I'm sure you've noticed my excessive blinking. Many people like to point that out. And that is actually a symptom of tardive dyskinesia that I've developed as a result of long-term use of taking antipsychotics. I still experience this even though I'm off medications now, because taking these medications for over a decade has resulted in this kind of permanent side effect that I now experience. And so being aware of that and trying to mitigate that if possible was important to me. It's also well known that these kinds of medications can impact metabolic health, leading to things like weight gain, insulin resistance, increased risk for diabetes. Understanding that this was a big risk of being on these medications, and also that I was finding such great success in literally metabolic therapies, it didn't really make sense to keep taking something that might effectively counteract the benefits I was working toward through metabolic therapies. When I started using ketogenic therapy and other metabolic therapies, I saw such profound improvements in my experience of my illness and my mental health in general. And so it really got me thinking, well, maybe I can manage my illness with just this instead of these antipsychotics, or maybe with less of these antipsychotics that I know affect me in these kind of negative ways. It also really felt like metabolic therapies were getting at the root causes of why I was experiencing these distressing symptoms of mental illness, as opposed to just addressing the symptoms. And so it was for all of these reasons that I made the decision, along with my care team, with my psychiatrist, with my therapist, with my GP, with my keto coach, to try to start reducing my medications in as safe a way as possible. And it kind of just kept being positively reinforced, whereby each time I went down, I started to feel better and better, and my symptoms were still under control. And so that's why I ultimately made the decision to try going completely off of my medications rather than just staying on a small dose, because I kind of wanted to see if it was possible. And I wanted to see how good I could feel reducing my medications as much as possible to the point of being on nothing, and seeing if I could still effectively manage my illness through metabolic therapies. And yeah, I really just wanted to see, what quality of life can I attain here? I also really want to stress that this decision and this process was not coming from a place of being rigid about this or being anti-medication in any way. It was really more about finding out if I could thrive with metabolic therapies and without my antipsychotic medication. I am completely open to potentially needing psychiatric medication to help manage my symptoms down the line if I ever come to a place where I need extra help managing my symptoms beyond just using metabolic therapies. It's really not about this all or nothing, I'm completely off medications and never going back, or I'm back on medications. It's a much more fluid, I think, journey that I'm exploring and going through than just that kind of black or white medication or not. Again, I am open to using it in the future, but at the current moment, I don't really need it. I hope that no one watches me going off my medications and thinks, okay, I can just stop taking my medication too. That is really not the point of what I've been sharing. I hope that sharing my experience helps others to feel empowered to explore what works best for them in terms of treating their own mental illness, and understanding that what works for one person may not work for the next, or vice versa. And everyone's journey of exploring how to most effectively manage their own mental health is going to look different. If you are thinking about adjusting your treatment, please do so in collaboration with your care team, with your psychiatrist, your doctors. I'm choosing to share extensively about metabolic therapies and how they can be used to manage mental illness because it's worked so well for me, and I do have hope that it could work really well for others. I also just want to make sure that everyone has access to this information. But ultimately, there is no right way to recover. What's most important is ultimately going to be what works best for you. So to wrap this all up, my decision to go completely off of my antipsychotic medications really came from a place of wanting to explore how I could improve my quality of life, wanting to explore how I could reduce or mitigate the long-term concerns I had around antipsychotic usage, and also to explore seeing if metabolic therapies could stand as an effective treatment for me on their own. So far, it has been a really big success, but I am always open to adjusting as needed in the future. I really appreciate everyone engaging in this conversation about this experience and options for treating mental health with questions like, the one that this video is centered around, about why I decided to go completely off my medication instead of staying on a low dose. If you have your own experiences you'd like to share, or you have further questions of your own, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. I think maybe I don't say this enough in our videos, so if you want to see more videos like this or more about this journey, please subscribe to our channel. And another thing I want to remind you about is our online peer support community. So we have one specifically geared toward people who are interested in exploring metabolic therapies to treat or manage their mental illness. And then we have another one that is specifically geared toward people with schizophrenia spectrum illnesses. So links to join both of those communities are in the description as well as in a pinned comment below. Thanks so much for watching this video. And as always, wishing you and your loved ones good health. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.